Welcome back to The Painted Peach. I'm Mary, and this is my channel. I'm so glad you're joining me today. Today I'm in a playlist collaboration with my friend Funky Junk Inspiration, and it is Stencil Sunday. Check out the link for all the creatives that are joining us. It is in my description. I am going to cover up this old project that I created a few years back, and we are going to use the color Vintage to cover it. It is a chalk paint, and I am covering the whole thing 3 times. Now I got out some of my white wax once I get this all dry, and I'm going to cover the whole thing with the white wax. I'm using a bristly furniture brush to put it all over, and then I'll use a paper towel to wipe it back. I just wanted to get it inside some of those crevices to give it a little bit more of a rustic touch. I'm going to give it a good thorough dry before we move on and wipe some more of it back. Getting out my sander and kind of sanding the top just to see how that looks. I'm kind of playing around to see what I want. Then I go back over it with the wax. I have this stencil from Couture. It has different branches and birds on it. We're going to use 2 of the branches that look like cherry blossoms, and we're going to use one of the birds. We're going to kind of alter the bird to make it more like a bluebird or something like that instead of a red bird. So I'm going to start with the branch that I want to be underneath, and I'm just going to use a neutral color and do the whole thing because I'm going to do a paint technique on these branches and the bird, and I only need to know where the flowers and the branch is going to be at. I'm going to dry that really good, and then I'm going to go over that one with the other branch that I want to use that has more flowers on it, and I'm going to use that same neutral color. I'm going to make sure they're good and dry, and then we're going to get out our paints and start adding some color. When doing this technique, you don't have to be precise. You just kind of need that outline so you know where your flowers are. I did put this back here because it was really hard for me to see where they were, so I was kind of going by what the transfer showed, or the stencil, and this filling in where I think the flowers are at. I'm using a couple different colors so that it's not just one blob of color. I'm going to paint with the darker color first, and then I'll dry in between, or sometimes I won't, and I'll add the other colors in. So I'm putting a lighter color on top of that. Darker color, I am letting some of the dark show through, and then I will also add a little bit of white. You could use your fingers for this. It's not going to be precisely in the lines, and that's what you want. It makes it look like it's been watercolored and line work has been done, and I really like the look of it. So we're going to put that stencil right back over the top, and we are going to start adding some colors on the lower branch. Then I'm getting out the brown and going over the branches with the brown. I'm just using my finger. You could use a stencil brush, a squeegee, or anything that you feel comfortable with, but I just wanted to get these branches on here so that we could get some color going. Now it still looks like a blob because we still have to do the line work. So I'm going to clean my stencils in between. I'm just spraying some water and wiping them back with a paper towel. They don't have to be perfectly clean. You just want to be able to see through them so that you can line them back up. Now I'm getting back my project, and we're putting the stencil back down. I decided I wanted to add a little bit more color in, and then I'll dry it, and then we'll do the stencil again. Don't forget that today we are in a playlist. You can check my description, and I'll have a link in there where you can watch everyone that is in the playlist with me, and my co-host. There will be a tag for her channel. Make sure you go check her out. I'm going over it with black this time so that it looks like we have outlined the or done some line work on the watercolor. We're going to do the same thing with the top one. And I really like how it's turning out, but we still end up playing with it a little bit more. I'm going to make sure that's fully dry before I add any more color to it. So I'm going back in and I'm correcting some of the areas where I had way too much of the brown. I'm just using that vintage color and correcting that. And then I'm going to dry it. I'm going to clean these transfers again. Make sure you do this, especially if you're using paint. You want to make sure you clean your transfers right away, or stencils. I call them transfers because that's what Chalk Couture called them. But I'm just using plain water in that spray bottle. It is not Dawn dish soap. It is plain water, and I'm just cleaning them, wiping them back. So I'm redoing it, placing my stencil again, and going back over it with that black. I felt like the black didn't really go through the first time, so I'm trying some chalk paste that I have. It's a little thick, so it went on pretty good. Now I'm going to dry it again. This is just a bunch of different processes that I'm going through here. I'm using a pen to kind of outline where the stencil really didn't go through. I think my paste was a little too thick, but I'm just doing some light pen work. I'm also going in with a white Uniball pen and adding some highlights in there, and I just keep playing with it until I get my flowers the way I'd like them. Then I get out my other stencil. It is the bird that is on there, one of the birds, and I go over the whole thing with that black paint up there so I have my outline, and then I use some turquoise color and some white, and I fill in the bird. I also use that vintage color to kind of cut off that top piece because I don't want it to look like a red bird. So I go in and I fill in the little birdie, and I'm going to alter it just a little bit so that it looks more like a little blue bird instead of a red bird. I'm adding a little bit of white in there. I made the head more curved, and we're going to make that beak a little bit smaller also. I'm lining that back up, and we are going to go over it again with the black to get that outline on the blue. And it tore my paper, so I had to go in and fix that and repaint those areas. I used my pen to draw on a new beak and draw the outline of the bird, and then I used the blue to go over everything, and then I got out some little brown to do the beak and the feet. Then I'm going to go in and add some line work with the pen and get out the white to add the little eyeball in there. And I kind of had to play around with that. I redid the eye a couple times. Like that much better. Now this isn't made to look like a realistic bluebird or anything like that. I just kind of wanted it to be colorful. So, you know, just do it how you like it. Now I'm getting my little paint palette or paint knife and just adding a little bit of white here and there, kind of scraping it across there just to add in a little bit of texture to the background. And I'm using an antique white to do that. Once I get that all covered to my liking, I'm going to make sure it's good and dry, and then we are going to create a little nest up in the right corner where the branch is. So I'm just using some brown like I used on the bird. I'm using some black and some white. I'm just kind of, you know, making it a nest, a little twiggy, and you just have to keep layering until you get it the way you want. I do use my palette knife and a brush, and sometimes I use my fingers to make the little nest. We're going to put some little blue eggs in there also, and you just keep working with it until it looks like a nest in your mind, and then add your little eggs in there. I started out with some vintage white to make my eggs, and I used the back end of my brush, and I just made some little oval shapes. After that, I went in with that turquoise in the back of my brush and colored them in. I didn't fully color them because I wanted some of that white showing. I then dry them again and go in with some shadowing with the black pen and some outlining, and then I do believe I go back in again with some of the white and turquoise. I think I ended up with a cute little nest with some pretty little blue eggs in there. I'm using that Uniball pen to add some highlights on my bird and my nest and my eggs. And then we are going to use this little splatter brush to kind of rough it up, and then I'll add some more white in. It's just layering and layering and layering until you get it how you like it. Alright, now I'm going over here and I'm just writing to see what I want to put on here. I decide I don't like this after I put it. I mean, I like it, but not the way I placed it, so I paint back over that. And then I get out some stamps and I start adding some texture to my background with some Dollar Tree stamps that have words on them. There's some little floral designs. I'm using a mixture of black and brown archival ink, and then I think I get out my Distress Oxide in the blue color, and I use that as well. I think I also use a little bit of my pink. I'm just adding a little bit of interest in the background because, you know, it was kind of plain, and I like a little bit of rustic look. Once I get all the stamping done that I want, I'm going to go back in with my palette knife and use some of that white to kind of add a little bit more texture back there. And then I'm going to give everything a good dry. Then I decide I want my top and bottom little pieces, the little frame area, to be lighter. So I go in with that vintage color and the vintage white, and I go over those two pieces with that, and I think it looks a lot better with them being framed out. I'm sorry that I don't have the one on the bottom in frame. I was having a little bit of issue with my camera placement today, but then I go all the way around it as well, and then I add that wax on again to go around the edges and wipe it back. Then I decide I want the frame to be completely white, so I add the vintage white on there by itself and make it completely white. And here it is, all finished up. I think it's super cute. I didn't add words because I thought it would just be too much, but let me know what you would add if you added words. I hope you'll join us next month for the first Sunday of the month for Stencil Sunday, and until then, stay peachy.